What's up everyone, Curtis here with another episode of Everything Entrepreneurial. In this episode I'm speaking with Roy Lalor. Roy is a master franchisor and managing director of School is Easy Ireland. He brought School is Easy Ireland to Ireland in 2020. Roy has an extensive background in education and training, gained over 40 years, and he is also a trained mediator. I hope you enjoyed the episode. So thanks very much, Roy, for coming on the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your business?
So thanks very much for having me on, Curtis. I'm very grateful. So I've been in education for nearly 40 years. I don't say exactly how long, but education and training is my background. I was teaching in for City of Dublin VEC for a number of years, and I've also taught in Bray. So I've a lot of experience in education. I've owned a Pippin training franchise in Swords for the last 15 years, and I am very interested in franchising, obviously, because I bought another one. But 15 years ago, in 2006, we were looking at franchising an existing business we had, and the Irish Franchise Association were basically putting us through the hoops and saying, well, you can't have a master franchise business or set your own master franchise up unless you have a pilot running already and unless you can prove it. And, they were very correct and very ethical. So as it happened, it was a safety training business we had, an almost nationwide safety training business. But in the end, we didn't franchise it. Instead of that, we bought the Pippin training franchise, and we've had that, as I said, for the 15 years. And in that business, we train legal secretaries, medical secretaries, exec PAs, people like accounts technicians, people like that. But the company Pippin Training was taken over by a large international education brand called Launch Life. Launch Life means really launch your life or get your life on track. And they have 5 education brands, including Pippin Training and including School is Easy, the master franchise I bought. And they said that at a quarterly meeting for Pippin, they said they had a very interesting opportunity for Ireland, a master franchise opportunity. And so going back 15 years, thinking about what we tried to do, and then I said to myself, this is a nice opportunity. I think I might like this. So we bought the master franchise for Ireland for School is Easy, and we have 4 centres in Dublin already. Brilliant. And we're looking for franchisees now in other areas of the country.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. I'm interested to hear the desire from you to start your own business. Where did that come from? Growing up, was there anyone in your family, friends, anyone that you've seen that had their own business and you wanted to kind of do the same, or how did it come about?
I think I've always been sort of entrepreneurial. Even though I worked in a fairly conservative profession for 40 years, there were little bits of entrepreneurial sort of spirit breaking out in me when I went to work when I was 12. I worked. My father lost his job back 1970, and he was out of work for a while. So he got a job as an accountant in a plastics factory, and I got a summer job there, working 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening, packing plastic products. And so I had an idea of what work was like from an early age. Yeah. And then I trained as a lifeguard. I worked as a lifeguard when I was a student for about 6 years. And I also got involved in swimming teaching. So when I was 18, I set up a swimming teaching program in Bray, in Presbray, which is my old school. And then that expanded into teaching classes in Glasnevin, and Donamead, and Gormiston, Monkstown, the Blue Pool. So we had a fairly big operation going at one stage. But swimming teaching is very tiring because you're worried all the time. You're watching the pool every minute because you're just worried about safety. It's not like, say, having a sports hall where somebody might have no serious injury, might break a leg or something. But swimming can be fatal. So we were very careful about that. But we realized eventually we'd have to get out of it. So that was going for quite a while. And even when I was 21 and had left college, I rented a private school for the summer to run a summer school, but that collapsed. We didn't get enough people, and I lost my first shirt anyway when I was 21. So while paying that back. But as I say, the thing has been breaking out. We had sailing and canoeing business in Greystones in the summers as well. We had contracts with foreign language schools, and I was doing that when I was a student. So I was always interested in business. But the problem for my generation was that your parents usually, if you found a job that you liked, your parents generally said to you, "Well, listen, this is it. You're at it now, and don't get out of that." The safe, permanent job was a thing. I found though when I got married, my wife kind of had the same view. We always thought that we should at least have one proper job, so there was always some sort of income coming in. And then when you have children, you have to think about those. And our lads were in education during the recession in 2008 that went on till about 2013. I think it's still going on, but anyway, that's my sort of interest in being an entrepreneur. And I suppose I also I admire some of the older entrepreneurs. There's a man you might be familiar with, Eddie O'Connor, who was the CEO of Bordnamona. And he then went on and set up Airtricity, and then set up Mainstream Power, and he's sold his businesses twice, and he's starting another one, and I think he's in his 70s now. So it's good to hear that you don't have to stop just because you've reached a certain designated age, that you can actually keep going if you have the vision maybe and the energy. But no, I'm not comparing myself to Eddie O'Connor. I've always only been in a small way of business, but hopefully this new business school is easy will be very successful.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to touch base on your experience starting your first business back then. Like, how did you manage that? Did you have that skill set before you started your business? Did you learn on the job like many of us do? How did you kind of develop as a business owner, as an entrepreneur?
So are you asking me about the business the Pittman training business we set up in 2007?
Yeah, well, yeah, just in general, your career, like how have you evolved as an entrepreneur and a business owner? Because you wear many hats, especially at the start when you might not have the team around you, you might not have the resources.
Yes.
Like how did you manage all of that?
Being able to trust people. When we were teaching swimming, we always had youngsters working with us, helping out. Some people might start helping in the pool, and then we would train them in to be swimming teachers. We had a connection with a friend who was a very good swimming tutor. So anybody who worked for us, they mightn't get huge pay, but they got very good training, which they could take away. And some of them did. Some of them used their swimming teaching qualifications later when they were in their own college days, and when we had retired, long since retired from teaching swimming. But we were running this commercial swimming school for nearly 30 years. So I got a good idea about systems. I knew that I had to fill a swimming pool with a certain number of people. I knew I had to have a certain number of swimming teachers to be on the thing. Some of my people might have been not so time conscious, one or two. So I had a minibus used to come to my house and bring the teachers to Gormiston, because Gormiston is in the middle of County Meath, and it's relatively inaccessible if you don't have your own transport. So I would think that far ahead, I suppose, that I would have the people there, and then of course we'd be on time. And one of my students who was working for me as well, she said to me, "Roy, this is dreadful. You have me up here 20 minutes early, But of course you can't be late for a thing like a swimming class. You have to be there. Yeah. So organization, I did learn a bit about organization. Now, subsequently, then my wife had been working in marketing in Bord Gáis Éireann, so she was in a big corporate from an early age, and they had computers and they were very organized. And then when our youngest was, I think 3 and 5, she decided she'd like to do something different. So she was at home after 20 years in corporates and wanted to do another thing. So my friend, who was the swimming tutor, and myself, we thought that first aid training, safety training, things that we had been doing in our life-saving capacities could transfer to the commercial side. So she set up a very successful first aid training business. And I think we would have been probably very early adopters of websites. So back in 2000, we knew about websites. We got a grant at the time, this is going back a long time, but we got a grant from our local enterprise board, which was very helpful to build a website. So we were familiar with websites from a very early age, or early stage in our business careers. And then it went from there, and that kept going side by side. We still had the commercial swimming school with a couple of centres. And then, as I say, in 2007, we opened the Pittman Training Centre. And the great thing about a franchise is that you're buying a system. You're buying something that somebody else has proven already. So when you hear that lots of small businesses fail after the first years, or the entrepreneur loses focus or doesn't really know what he or she is doing, which you see quite a lot of, um, the actual franchise, it helps you with sales, it helps you with marketing, it helps you with finance, it helps you with finding leads. It shows you how to operate finding leads, and it shows you most importantly that you have to follow up on leads. Because again, I think in a lot of businesses, they may have a good product or service, but they may not be very consistent in answering the phone or in replying to email or all the things that you have to do in business, regardless of how tire kicking it seems that the inquiry might be. You still have to pursue it through to the nth degree. So I actually think I learned quite a bit from franchising in that sense. And the other thing is that when you're in a meeting with somebody, and to be honest, when you're in a meeting, it's a sales meeting, and it could take an hour, but I learned how to listen. I got much better at listening, and I think that helped me maybe in my teaching, because I went back to teaching in 2011. That's another story. But also maybe in dealing with my then teenage children, that I got better at listening and didn't jump in.
They sound like all valuable skills that you've learned, and I don't actually know a lot about franchising, but it seems the way you've described it, there's like an ecosystem there that there's like a full support network within the franchise, and like you said, they can help with sales, marketing, everything like that. There's systems and processes in place to kind of help the business owner start with their franchise. That's really impressive.
I think yes, I think you put your finger on it really. That the figures are startling. If you buy a franchise with after 5 years, there's about 95% of them still in business. If you start your own business, the collapse rate is about 90% after 5 years. So it's really startling. You could set up a business, but you might have a very good idea. You might take on a partner though, and the partner might be very difficult. You may not be able to agree. I mean, I have friends who've got fairly good businesses now, but maybe not be to still not talking to their partner. Like those things in a small business can be catastrophic. Whereas when you buy a system, when you are told yes, you'll get so many leads from our company website, and you have to answer those leads in a timely manner. You have to phone them up and make an appointment for them to come in. And then when they come in and they're doing their courses, you have to look after them and be nice to them, because that's really what it's about. When people are learning, particularly adults coming back to learning, they're nervous and frightened. So if your people are helping them, they won't be nervous and frightened. But if you have somebody who's anyway hard to deal with, and I'm talking about a staff member, then you have problems, and your students will stop coming, or they'll also tell other people, because social media is very powerful now. They'll tell social media that they're not happy with the treatment they got. So I think those sort of things are important, and those are the benefits of franchising. Now, I mean, from the point of view of the company that's owned the franchise, it's a good business model, because if you have a really good business idea that you've been running for a while and you'd like to expand, it's very hard to put 20 sites around, even say just around Ireland. But if you get enthusiastic entrepreneurs to buy a franchise, then they're taking some of the cost, they're sharing the load with you. So a business can expand more easily by actually being a franchise.
So there's a power of networking there as well. Like you said, as you're building your network up within the franchise itself, it can really everyone's helping each other out, I suppose.
Well, yeah, there's support now. I mean, the Pippin training is there's 18 centres throughout the country. That's the other business that we have that I mentioned. We started in 2007. There's an owners meeting every quarter, and sometimes there's blood on the floor because we don't always agree about everything. But from kind of conflict comes ideas and comes definition and acceptance as well of what the other person's thinking about and why he or she might be coming the way they are. So and in some areas too, you can be in competition with your neighbor. So the person you most admire in business might also be a serious competitor for you, because they're selling the same product in their own territory. You can't you can't intrude into somebody's territory. But there can always be little border disputes that break out from now and then. But when you've been in a franchise for a long time with franchise partners in other parts of the country who are have the same goals as you, that there's often a lot of go forward. So that's you effectively kind of have a board. So there's that, and then there's the support from the master franchisor. So they're helping you with the marketing and the advertising and just even HR issues. There's a lot of things you can bounce off the master franchisor because they usually have a head office, and they have staff. So you're not on your own when you're in a franchise. Whereas if you're, and I speak from experience here, when you're running your own small business, you have to make your own mistakes as you go along, and there isn't somebody there to help you generally.
Very true. Yeah, 100%. So in relation to your newest venture now, this is School is Easy. Is that correct?
So School is Easy is, and the idea is that it's home tutoring and that it will make school easier for children who may be struggling. So you could be somebody going into first year in school, and you mightn't have had a great run at the maths, say, and you're facing secondary school now. If you're going to do maths and you don't understand it properly, and you start from that base and keep going, and you're going into school every day feeling frustrated because you don't know what's going on, and you'll end up with what people used to refer to as a maths block. Oh, I hate maths, so I can't do maths. But actually, everybody can do maths if they're shown properly how to do it. But if there's a problem, that problem should be solved straight away. And it's you can't blame a teacher with 30 children in a classroom, or as they had during the pandemic, 24 and 6 sitting outside on the bench wait because they weren't let in because of the pandemic. And it's hard to blame teachers with a large number of classes, but in our situation, our franchisees manage a team of tutors, and they can send a tutor to the home of the person who's having the problem, and he can have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 classes, or he can have classes for the year if he wants to supplement his education, and that can be really helpful. But it's not just maths. I mean, we do all the subjects of the secondary school, and also we have people, say, who might be struggling with literacy. They might have a condition, they might have dyslexia. I mean, there's a lot of very, very famous people who are, including that chef, Jamie Oliver, who sorted out school meals in England. There's a lot of people who have dyslexia, and it may not have held them back, but it may have indicated a career path for them. Somebody might have said, oh, Jamie would be better off going and doing a bit of chefing because he won't have to worry too much about his literacy skills, whereas he now has come to the stage that he's writing loads of books. But for an ordinary child who has some literacy issues, that should be dealt with straight away. As soon as it's diagnosed, it should be dealt with straight away. And we would have tutors who would be able to help with that. And also people, say, young people who are excluded from school, because it's quite easy these days to be excluded, because if you have a class of 30 people and school is a one-size-fits-all model. So, I mean, there might be 1 or 2 fellas in the class who are not happy with being there and don't really like the group dynamic or having to stay quiet all the time. So they could be excluded because they're distracting other people. But there's nothing wrong with their brain. And so they could do maybe with tutoring, home tutoring for a while till they see what the system is about, what the thing is about. But that can be helpful too. Our children in care, we do some work with TUSLA, and one of our partners does some work with TUSLA. And so she's dealing this week with tutor hours for a girl who's in care, and she's going to get 4 or 5 hours a week of tutoring. So those things. But it wouldn't just be, like our age range is probably 5 to 19, the traditional school ages. But last week, one of the partners had a 23-year-old come to her, and he said he'd gone for an interview and got to the last stage, but because he didn't have Leaving Cert Maths, he didn't get the job, and he decided there and then at 23 that he was going to go back and do maths himself, and he was going to get the qualification so he wouldn't be in that position again at an interview. So, that idea can strike you at any stage. Usually it's parents, because parents identify pretty quickly that a child may be struggling in some area and they need to get help for that. And I think everybody in the country probably has had grinds. Like, I know when I was a kid, I went to a famous or a well-known learning institute in Dublin, and my children had, I know one of my boys, he was a bright student, but he was struggling with Irish, as a lot of people in Dublin do. And so a girl around the corner who was very, very passionate about Irish, she came down and gave grinds or spoke to him a couple of times a week when we were trying to solve that issue. And another, the younger fellow, I sent him down to Kerry to a fellow who taught Irish and French, and he spent a week there eating bacon and cabbage. So you don't have to go to those extremes to get tutoring for your child, but there are it's widely used in Ireland. I think everybody's had a taste of it.
Yeah, definitely. And just about I know you were discussing there about in-person tutoring, but I want to know a little bit more about the online. You have an app, is that correct?
Okay, so there are really three ways, I suppose, that you can access grinds with us. When we opened in Ireland, and I can't really say opened because the whole country was in lockdown. But when we started the business, and the franchise partner in Dublin and Wicklow, she switched from in-person visits to Zooming. So we were Zooming, the tutors were Zooming to children who were looking for grinds. Now, a lot of those would have been exam students, leaving certs, junior certs, people who were potentially facing exams or wanted assistance in some subjects. But we will be going back to in-person visits because that's the most effective way. That's our business model, really, is sending a tutor in who's matched to the child and who knows the child's requirements. And so that's the best way to do it. But if we can't do that, we can do the Zooming. And if we can't do that, or if we want something else, we have an app as well where a student can log on. You can just parents' credit card, they can just log on and they can get a 10-minute say they want to try and solve a maths problem they're working on, they're having difficulty with. That's a great thing to be able to do at, say, 10 o'clock at night if you are having trouble with something, and you can get someone to show you on a whiteboard how it works.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. So if anyone was looking to get in touch with yourself or to use your services, where's the best place to find you or your business online?
So you'll find us at schoolisiasy.com/Ireland/. You'll find our franchise partner, Sharon Bulger. You'll see her picture on the website, and you can contact her for grinds. And if somebody's interested in talking to me about a franchise business, you can contact us through the website, or you can contact us at Ireland@schoolisiasy.com.
Brilliant. Well, once again, Roy, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to keep in touch.
Thanks so much, Curtis. Pleasure to be on, and thank you very much for having me on.